So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about these things. Obviously, portable drills. Now, they're ubiquitous. They're just absolutely everywhere, and there's a huge range of prices, from broken ones at yard sales, car boot sales, junk shops, thrift stores for 5 and 10 quid, right the way up to ones at a professional level at £200 to £300. So there's just a massive amount of price range on them, depending on what it is that you get. What it is that you get, obviously, is very useful in whatever state it is, because even if the battery pack is gone and the drill is no longer usable, the motor is still very usable. And you can buy the motors by themselves, actually. But this thing comes with a whole lot of other stuff apart from just the motor. I mean, one thing is it's got a chuck here that is centered to the motor. So you can attach anything there to drive it, and you don't have to worry about centering it. You just make sure that it's, I think this is a 10mm shank, 10mm in there, connected up, and you're ready to go as long as you put a bit of power into it. You've also got a really usable switch right here. Very amazing. If you're going to take this whole thing to pieces and it's in relatively good condition, of course, you have a battery pack. This is a 1.5 amp hour 18 volt battery pack, and the plus and the minus is marked on it. You obviously get a charger with the thing, so you can charge the thing easily enough. So they're just amazingly useful bits of kit. And what we're going to do is we're going to take it to pieces. So all I've done is remove these screws in the case, and the case will just lift off. And that's the internals of it. So here clearly is the motor attached to the clutch mechanism. There's the switch. There's a little bit of electronics, and we've got 3 wires going to the battery pack. So those 3 wires, incidentally, there's the plus and the minus on the 2 outside. So that's the plus and the minus of your battery pack, which is the outside ones. And that third one there goes straight to this electronics, and that's to do with battery control. Now, you don't actually need that to run a motor. The motor will run from a straightforward DC supply. So if we take out the swap direction switch and the switch mechanism itself, it's got a little LED light, incidentally, in this one. And we can see that all we've got here is a black and a red going straight to that DC motor. So we can snip those off and connect them to a DC power supply or any other battery pack, and that motor will run. And we can pick that whole motor out along with its clutch mechanism. And you don't want to discard the case, because the case itself has got this housing here that is meant to use that. So that will fit exactly and very nicely. So if you're going to mount this on something, you put a screw in here, a screw in there, mount that back together and screw the whole thing in with this chopped off. You've got a beautiful fixed housing for your motor. And there's the motor itself. Now that's a bit you can actually buy online. They're about £10 or so. This bit here is obviously all of the clutch mechanism attached to that. Now that section is very usable just for attaching motors to run things. So that part itself is well worth having and just keeping so that you can attach things to it. Now it does have a clutch mechanism. So this is where the clutch is disengaged at the drill section, or you can set different clutches there using that ratchet. So again, an extraordinarily useful mechanism acquired from one of these things for next to nothing. All I've done is connect the motor directly to a DC power supply, and if I turn that voltage up, there you go, it begins running at about 4 volts. We'll take it to 18 volts. And that's the rated for that motor. Now you may be worrying about running these long term, but actually I've used these where I've put them in stirrers of very viscous solutions, incidentally, for things like 24 hours in a go. So they run for a very long time. As long as you make sure that this is free, so they get a lot of air on them to keep them cool, they'll run heavy duty loads for long periods of time. You'll have seen those on things like people's bicycles when they're making e-bikes. Then this motor's used a lot. And I've seen 4 of these used to run a boat, of all things. So they're very powerful motors. They run a long time, and they're very good for high torque loads. On the battery pack side of things, of course, it's the one thing they don't want you to get into. On the main drill, they just use a Phillips head. On these, they use a Torx screw. But if you get a Torx spanner, you just undo them, take it apart, and that's what you'll see inside. Now, in there are just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 18650s connected in series, and there's the minus and there's the plus. There's a little bit of control electronics here to control the pack, and that section there goes to your charger. You got a couple of choices here. I mean, It is a useful battery pack with the useful charger, so you can just keep the whole thing in one piece, and there it's marked which one's your plus and which one's your minus. This one was to control the electronics on the switchway, remember, the white wire that went there, and the other one is to control the electronics for the charger, and that's to prevent overcharge and also to prevent over discharge. So you make your choices about whether you use those or not. But as a straightforward battery pack, it's extremely useful, and of course these batteries can be picked out and rebuilt if you want. Now if you're buying a second-hand one, the chances are these are gone. If you're buying a new one, then you can reuse this stuff, or one that's got some life in it, you can certainly take that apart. I haven't taken it apart because it would mean breaking these, because they really don't want you in, so it's glued in, so you have to smash them open to get the actual cells out. I'm a bit reluctant to do that because it's already in a nice case, and I'm likely to reuse that case. So I've given this its own video because I wanted to point out to you how immensely useful those drills are. Even if they're broken, they come as a whole host of parts, not just the motor. The case itself is extremely useful, the motor is extremely useful, this bit here, which is a gearbox and a chuck, is extremely useful because that's all attached and ready to go, and it's easy to put something in there, tighten it up and drive whatever it is you want to drive. And like I say, I've seen a whole host of projects from boats to bikes to machines all running on these little motors. So if you do have some of those things, like I said, don't be afraid to take it apart and use it. Don't forget the case is very usable, the switch is very usable, and they're dead easy to drive. Attach the plus and the minus of DC and vary the voltage. You're going to be on a winner. Anyway, I thought I'd point all that stuff out to you. I hope you enjoyed the video, and thank you very much for watching.